This here is called Gillam's Camp, and in 1873 the U.S. Army set up camp here in what became known as the Modoc War. And right behind me, what used to be the shore of Tulelake. The lake used to come up right to the edge over there. And yeah, so this was a great place here for water and other resources. Prior to the Army coming here, this place here was used by the Modoc Indians for at least 11,000 years. The whole area around the lake had different Modoc Indian encampments, and oftentimes the camps here were year-round, but camps up further were seasonal, so they would always return here to the shore of the lake. This stone ring here is part of the Army camp, although they're not entirely sure what it was used for. This area here was also used by the Civilian Conservation Corps beginning in 1933. The Civilian Conservation Corps was here until the 40s and built much of the infrastructure for the Lava Beds National Monument here. So a lot of the trails and things that you might walk on here were all created in the 30s by them. I'm up on the bluff overlooking Gillam's camp, and you can just imagine if you had been here, 150 years ago, you would have seen a massive, massive lake. Like that whole area would have just been covered in water. This area here was the cemetery for the soldiers killed in the Modoc Indian War. Eventually, all of the remains were moved from here. Some were moved to Fort Klamath, but all of them eventually ended up at the Presidio in San Francisco. This area behind me, as far as you could see, would have been a lake in 1873. Beginning in the early 1900s, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation began draining Tulelake, and by 1950s their drainage was complete. They drained about 90% of the water from this lake. This here is called Captain Jacks Stronghold, and I think it's really the most important story about Lava Beds National Monument, much more so than the natural history. So Captain Jack was the name given to a Modoc Indian leader whose name was actually Kintpuash. And this is where the Modoc Indian War actually happened. It's right on the shore of what would have been Tulelake then. So they had plenty of water, and it's absolutely just an incredible natural fortress of lava. I really don't want to give this history any injustices, but I also want to give you the absolutely most abbreviated history lesson of the Modoc Indian War I possibly can. So, alright, here goes. For over 11,000 years, Modoc Indians had lived and thrived on the shores of Tulelake, but by 1850, the Applegate Trail had begun bringing European settlers here, and with them came this idea of year-round exclusive land use, something that was completely foreign to the Modoc Indians. Of course, with this came a lot of conflict. And in 1852, a man by the name of Ben Wright orchestrated and led a massacre on the Modocs. where over a few days they murdered hundreds of Modocs, 10% of the Modoc tribe. Of course, after the massacre, there were a lot of retaliatory strikes by Modoc Indians, and the conflict just grew. The conflict ebbed and flowed until 1864. The Modoc finally agreed to be removed and go to the Klamath Reservation in southern Oregon. The problem was that the Klamath Reservation already had 2 tribes on it. Continued clashes with the Klamath Indians and provisions promised by the United States government that never arrived caused a lot of hardship on Modocs at the Klamath Reservation. In 1870, Kintpuash, or Captain Jack as white people called him, led 60 warriors and their families back here to their homeland, and they immediately requested a reservation here. The United States government sent a peace delegation to negotiate with the Modoc. However, their only real purpose was to get the Modoc to return to the Klamath Reservation, something the Modoc definitely were not going to do. In November of 1872, the U.S. Army tried to arrest Captain Jack, and that began the Modoc War. So in November of 1872, the Modoc retreated here to Captain Jacks Stronghold, this natural fortress. There's lots of little caves, lots of places to hide, lots of places to defend yourself. All around, there's just numerous places where rocks are stacked up to make walls. There's just a lot of evidence of human habitation here. There's a lot of very small caves, places you could easily see someone having a fire, a campfire to cook, or getting out of the wind. I mean, this really is a perfect stronghold, a natural stronghold. Soon after Captain Jack coming here, the Army sent General Canby to negotiate a peace settlement. Again, unfortunately, the peace settlement involved the Modoc going back to the Klamath Reservation, which they really were not willing to do. After months of a stalemate, in April of 1873, Captain Jack and several other people murdered General Canby and Reverend Thomas at the peace negotiations. The site of General Canby's death is memorialized today, just a few miles down the road at Canby's Cross. The killing of General Canby actually had the opposite effect that the Modoc Indians had wanted. It actually reinvigorated the U.S. Army, which was camped down at Gillam's camp down the road. And there had been very low morale. A lot of the people there just didn't want to fight in the war. But now, reinvigorated, they launched an attack here right on the lakeside. And soon after, they cut off the Modoc Indians from the water source. And soon after, they had to surrender. After the war, Captain Jack and several others were arrested and taken to Fort Klamath, which is just south of Crater Lake today. The rest of the Indians were actually shipped off to a reservation in Oklahoma in an effort to dissuade them from coming back again and trying to reassert their rights to the land. In October 3rd of 1873, Captain Jack and 3 others were hanged at Fort Klamath, and their graves still sit at Fort Klamath today. Well, I hope I didn't bore you with too many details. It's just that I think this is such important American history, and when you're in a place like this, you just feel that history like really deep down. I mean, you can just look around, you see, just the place where all these people lived and fought and died. This here is Petroglyph Point, and this massive, huge rock here is a huge piece of volcanic tuft. It's rather soft, and at one time it was an island completely surrounded by Tulelake. And for thousands of years, Modoc Indians came here by boat and carved inscriptions in the wall here. All around the base here, you see right at the base the smooth undulations caused by the waves lapping against the rock. And within that is where you see all these beautiful petroglyphs just covering this whole wall here. Of course, anything sacred to someone is gonna be just graffiti to someone else. A bunch of numbnuts have gone and scraped their initials and things in the wall. Such a bummer.